Thank you. Uh, we always start off our meetings by referencing this TOPS code of conduct. So the NASA Transform to Open Science mission, which I'll say a bit more about in a moment. Uh, we run meetings that are empowering and inclusive. It's impossible to list everything that we can do to create a welcoming space, but it goes without saying. We want to be good listeners, be good participators. We want to ask questions and be respectful of other people's points of view. We'll always start the meeting with a code of conduct, especially in these virtual meetings. So some of you may not have heard of the NASA TOPS mission before. At present, it's actually undergoing some rebranding into NASA Open Science Initiatives. But this was a mission that was launched at the end of 2023. A vision where scientific discoveries can be accelerated by open science collaborations. The goal really there in this 5-year commitment is to increase understanding and adoption of open science principles and to accelerate major scientific discoveries. So the term open science itself is open to interpretation. In many circles, when you hear open science, really what it stands for them is in this reproducibility column of using open tools, frameworks, and libraries, being transparent in methodologies. In the TOPS conception of open science, we also include accessibility. So not just the FAIR principles, which some folks might have heard of. FAIR is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable for software and data. But also accessibility means that it's in terms that people can understand. It's not documentation that is loaded with jargon. I think, being inclusive as part of open science is really about expanding participation and, creating pathways to science for people who were historically excluded. So again, to emphasize, why NASA took on this mission, this idea that we're facing some really wicked problems as a planet, and we need more people and more eyes and more brains with a variety of experiences to help answer those questions. So the hypothesis is that we get more eyes on the problem, we're going to accelerate scientific discovery. And I think this is proven out in, especially in astronomy, when we have lots of, open science astronomers who are identifying asteroids and comets that otherwise may go undetected for a long period of time. So that's the goal behind it all, is to bring more people into the fold and to speed up the scientific discovery. So then our particular project, the school project, is part of a NASA Roses initiative in the TOPS mission that is the TOPS Training ScienceCore. And what that does is, rather than focusing only on the general open science questions, it is a more domain specific. So there are several other projects that were funded under this that focus on things like, looking at the sun or looking at space. Our project in particular focuses on NASA Earth science applications, and that's across a number of different themes, including water resources, health and air quality, disasters, wildfires, EJ, agriculture, and climate, like we're here to talk about today. So what we do in this project is we create online learning modules, utilizing code. We're language agnostic, but we've written lessons in R and lessons in Python. And then they focus on the data science lifecycle across these several different NASA Earth science themes. So what is the data science lifecycle? Here's an image for us. Something, I should mention that, I'm a teacher of GIS and spatial analysis, and I think in my classes, they're really all about the data science lifecycle. And it's this idea that we generate or we acquire some new data. We have to think about how to process it and store it. Is it going to be something we can store locally, or are we going to store it in the cloud? Once we figure out how we're pre-processing and storing it, then we look at the management and analysis. Maybe we apply some algorithms or statistical techniques. We want to create good metadata so that people can use our work down the road. Next, we'll visualize and interpret the data, either with charts or maps or a combination of the two. This oftentimes brings up additional thought questions and examples from other work that we need to consider. And then finally, it's about sharing the results with the community. So this is open science and community engagement, where maybe we write a peer-reviewed paper, maybe we make a post on a public repository like Zenodo, but we get the word out so that we can stand on the shoulder of giants, as Stephen Hawking once said. So then how does open science in particular contribute to this work? For one, you're here with us today. We've also incorporated many other volunteers from all over the world. We've taken an approach to the project that takes like an agile development software approach. If you're familiar with that, it's this idea of continuous release, continuous integration, and continuous improvement. Whereas the waterfall development approach would be let's build it and then release it and hope everyone comes. We've been releasing things as we go along. The image on this slide here is of a presentation that was given to the Ecuador Space Agency in July of 2024. It was led by my colleague on the call here, Juan Martinez, where we talked about water resource issues based on our lessons, and then we showed people how to code in the cloud in order to adapt those lessons to their local areas of interest. For school, open science is also about open source tools. All of our artifacts are being archived in the NASA data centers, as well as in the generalist repository Zenodo, where after this meeting, we'll take the video and the slides from this and we'll post it in Zenodo with all of us as contributors. We found it's been really good for people who are early career scientists, that we make these entries in Zenodo and we get a digital object identifier and a citation. It becomes something that we can point to on our CVs and resumes and show that we're part of the work. All of our development is taking place in GitHub with version management, and we're using open libraries like Quarto and Jupyter Notebooks to make markdown files that then get rendered by GitHub pages. I want to remind folks, if you don't already have an ORCID ID, it's a good idea to get one. This is like your own unique digital identifier for your research, so that when you post something and you link it to your ORCID, it will persist with you throughout the whole of your career. So we use ORCID in the project in order to make sure everyone is getting the credit they deserve. We also publish and share our videos on YouTube with this idea that let's go to where the people are and not expect them to come to our website. So what is special about the school project? I think it's really the thematic deck that makes it unique. We have our water module and our air quality module, as well as all of these other themes on disasters, EJ, and wildfires, agriculture, and climate. So it's a very broad scope. And I think that if you look amongst open source projects, mainly they're for one particular community. But our goal here is to teach the data science lifecycle and open science principles to people who are interested in various different themes. So I should have mentioned already, but we're aiming this curriculum at undergraduate and above. So we don't assume that people have background in the themes, and we're not necessarily trying to teach them how to code, although we use code. What we're trying to teach them how to do is to access, store, analyze, and share scientific results. So we've run a number of kickoff workshops for our modules. The first one was in October of 2023. and it was at Columbia University in correspondence with an NSF program called iGuide. Now, I really can't remember what that acronym stands for, but I would encourage everyone to check out the iGuide.illinois.edu website. This is a big program that's providing scientific infrastructure for researchers and forwarding open science principles as well. So they're very much uh, in line with us. And, it was really, I think, an early achievement for our project to take a NASA workshop and embed it inside an NSF workshop. So if that's not open science, I don't know what is. So at these workshops, we brainstorm use cases and we think about how to craft the lessons we're going to develop. So for the water module, what we've released, which we think of it as being in a beta format, has 3 core lessons in it. So one of them is based on historic data from the WSIM GLDOS data set, where we look at water anomalies like flood and drought over a long historical period. I think back to 1948, but please correct me in the chat if that's wrong, Josh. In lesson 2, we took an approach that was more near real time. So we looked at the NASA LANCE system, which provides data from MODIS on flooding. And we teach people how to access that data from the past couple of days so that they can look at the historical context in lesson 1, but then apply it to modern day problems in lesson 2. Then lesson 3, we focused on water quality issues, particularly pulling data from the New York State Department of Health and exploring lead contamination in schools in New York State. And looking at that with a discerning eye towards data limitations. I think this will be a theme we come back to a lot, is that we tend to focus on what can you do with a data set and what maybe you shouldn't do with it. So then last year at the AAG annual meeting, we held a kickoff for our health and air quality module. Followed a similar format. We heard from subject matter experts like yourselves, and then with the audience, we brainstormed for future use cases to design our lessons based on. So the air quality module is also in a beta format. We have a few lessons there. The first looks at air quality and social vulnerability in the Metro Detroit area. So very timely for the AAG meeting coming up in Detroit. And then we compare that to National Social Vulnerability Index to examine if the areas that are most vulnerable are also the areas experiencing some of the worst air quality. In lesson 2, we leveraged the EPA's EJ screen tool to look at EJ issues and demographic data surrounding air quality. And then in lesson 3, we looked, rather than at a local scale, at a global scale to look at PM 2.5 or particulate matter 2.5 pollution, social vulnerability, and a proxy for health impacts using a gridded relative deprivation index data set from NASA. So I'd encourage you guys to take a look back at these, after the meeting. We kicked off our 3rd module on disasters and wildfires at the ESIP, or the Earth Science Information Partners summer meeting in July in Asheville. Again, we're following the same pattern where we're hearing from subject matter experts. Some of the key takeaways from this meeting was that we have an open science life cycle, a data science life cycle. When you talk about disasters, you actually also need to think about the disaster life cycle, which is, preparedness, response, recovery. One interesting thing we heard here is that if you're discussing these sensitive topics that could be traumatic, or people have lived through disasters, they have to be very careful in how you frame the language. I know, especially when we're aiming at undergraduates, we want to kind of be not be triggering for them if they're coming from experiences of these wildfires we've just been seeing in California over the past month. So module 3 is very much under development still. But the lessons that we're looking at is in lesson one, we're looking at an analysis of the Canadian wildfire impacts, which was two summers ago at this point. Then we bring in a number of different satellite data sources in order to evaluate that. We're working on developing a lesson on impact assessments using imagery, and also a third lesson where we look at these highly vulnerable, low-lying coastal areas. Particularly in that lesson, we're looking at Puerto Rico to see if following Hurricane Maria, there are demographic changes in these areas. And again, keeping that data science life cycle in mind, how do we get prepared for the next disaster? So module 4 is why we're here today. It's on climate and agriculture. We'll be kicking it off for you on March 24th. We do have some interactions already underway with some people who have volunteered contributions. Jacob is here in the call today from the NASA Acres program at University of Maryland. I think he'll have a few minutes to say something about the lesson he's been developing with us. And also a colleague who couldn't make it, Jorge Silas from the NSF AI2ES Institute, is talking with us about how AI and agriculture data can be used to teach people and farmers to identify risks before they occur. So this is just a list of people who are part of the development team. So it's led primarily here at Columbia University, but we've had substantial contributions from our colleagues at iSciences. And iSciences is a private company that focuses on climate security issues. And then we have colleagues who couldn't make it today from the City University of New York Institute for Demographic Research, who have also provided really important inputs for us. So, here are some links to our community websites. I'll be sure to share these slides with you after the meeting so that you're able to access these. And I just want to thank you again for helping us kick off our module lessons on climate and agriculture. And at this point, let's turn the floor over and go through a round of introductions. Really like to hear more about the work you're doing. But that being said, I'm going to lob it over to my colleague at Columbia, Linda Pistolesi, to start the ball rolling with introductions. Go ahead, Linda.
Thanks, Kit. So it's great to meet all of you finally after all the email communications. I really appreciate your responsiveness, and I'm happy to meet you and looking forward to the panel session. I want to just say I'm a GIS specialist in the Geospatial Applications Division at CEASON, and I'm currently working on the latest version of Gridded Population of the World, which is CEASON's flagship gridded population product. And I've worked with Kit for a long time, and currently on this TOPS project. I'd like to just pass it over to Faize, if I said your name correctly, because I know you need to drop off. Is that correct?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm sorry for the conflict. I have another meeting, so I need to be so fast. My name is Faiz and I'm a second-year PhD student at the University of Oklahoma, and I'm a part of the NASA Finance program. And my research is mainly focused on developing local climate zone data sets in the finance program. But for the AAG conference, I'm working on assessing the drought effects on crop productivity using multimodal remote sensing data, including optical thermal and radar data, along with the ScienceCore aggregate data as a benchmark, and using deep learning models. I hope I had time to show you some results, but unfortunately I need to be in another place in 2 minutes, and I need to be fast. And also I won't be able to join the meeting in person in AAG conference because I have another conference, and I need to be there for the first 3 days. And I only will attend the AAG conference in the last 2 days. I hope to see all of you in the last 2 days, but I will join the TOPS school panel virtually in the day. And I hope to see you all, guys, and good luck. Sorry for that.
No, thank you so much even for just joining for the time that you had. We really appreciate it.
Thanks.
If you'd like, you can share, I shared a Google Drive, so if there's any information you want to drop into the Google Drive, that's also shared with
I will.
everyone
I will.
else. So
I
thank
will.
you so
Thank you so
much.
much. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Maybe I can lob it over to Elizabeth next, or yeah, let's go to Elizabeth.
Thanks,
Or
Linda.
actually, you know what, Elizabeth, do you mind if
Yes.
maybe our maybe the school team can do our brief introductions first, and then the panelists can do their
Okay, sounds great.
fine? Okay, thank you. Sorry for that. So Camilla, how about you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Camilla Green. I'm a research staff assistant at Season, working on the projects Linda mentioned, Greater Population of the World, and the school project. I'll pass it to Christina.
I'm Christina Diodatis. I also work on Greater Population of the World and the school project at Season. And I'll pass it over to Juan.
Hello, everybody. Juan Martinez. I'm a senior research assistant at Season, and I'm also a student at SIPA for public administration. I'll pass it over to Josh Brinks.
Hi, I'm Josh Brinks. I'm a research scientist with iSciences, the private partner. I'm a forest ecologist by training, and now I work in anything an environmental consulting company would do, from being a contributor to CI Political Task Force to geospatial water security stuff, or partnering on federal and academic stuff like this, which I like to do most. So I write lessons for this project and also try to handle all of the kind of back-end issues with the website and the Docker and all of our cloud platform things. I kind of stumble through all that stuff. I'm not really amazing at anything, but I'm pretty good at a lot of stuff. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. So that's, I don't know, I think everybody on our team has probably talked, right? So we can
Maybe Greg.
maybe move.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Greg's there. There he's hiding. Yep. Hi, Greg. Pass it to you.
Thanks. And I just realized my video was off as you were wrapping up, so I was definitely hiding. Excuse me. Greg Edmond. I'm Associate Director for Geospatial Applications at Season. Geographer by training. A lot of work on population modeling, including Greater Population of the World, way back to version 2, which is over 20 years ago now. And infrastructure data for hazards exposure, and more recently, work on foundational mapping for health service delivery in sub-Saharan Africa. So thanks everybody for joining.
Thank you, Greg. Jacob, do you want to introduce yourself? And then we'll jump into the panelists.
Yeah, I would love to. Hi, everyone. Really good to meet you all, and thank you for letting me join. My name is Jacob. I'm a program support specialist at NASA Acres, which, like Kit mentioned, it is hosted out of the University of Maryland, and I work under Dr. Mike Humber as part of that program. Yeah, also happy to introduce the module a little bit more, but I think that's for later.
Sorry, I was having trouble with my mute button. Okay, Elizabeth, the floor is yours.
Well, thanks, Linda, and thank you everyone for inviting me to be on this panel. My name is Elizabeth Dwanzik, and I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Colorado, Denver. And the degree is Geography, Planning, and Design, which has been really interesting. I'm a geographer originally by training, and I've done that for quite a few years before jumping into a PhD program. And now layering all the urban planning on top has been quite an experience. But I'm really interested in these like practical applications of geography, which is partly why I joined this program. And my research is looking at the impacts of heat and the unequitable impacts of heat in our urban climate. I'm dealing a lot with health data right now, and the module 2 with the air pollution and the social vulnerability index is very similar to some of the things that I've been looking at, looking specifically at heat and vulnerability and how we kind of see these different patterns spread out across our urban spaces. So I'm really excited, like I said, to be part of the panel. I don't really know anything about agriculture, so really excited to hear about all of those things, but really interested in climate and specifically heat. So thank you again.
Yeah, well, we certainly need your expertise on climate. So thank you so much for joining.
Masha, I'm just going to go across my grid here, and Masha's next.
Sure, yeah. I did prepare a few slides, so I'm just gonna pull that up really quickly. Slideshow. Can people see? Can you see my slides? Yes. Okay, cool. I'll
Yes.
take it as enough. Okay, great. Okay, cool. I couldn't see if people were nodding or anything. Okay, so yeah, so I am in agriculture. That's kind of, or food systems and agriculture. That's my whole jam. My interest areas are organic agriculture and specifically the intersection with climate vulnerability and adaptation. I also have done farm work myself. This is a picture of me on the farm where I was working part-time this past summer, but I've also worked there full-time in past seasons. I'm standing in front of a bunch of radicchio, which was their kind of specialty crop. Yeah, and I'm also interested in, questions of seeds and agrobiodiversity and social equity. In terms of research methods, I'm really interested in mixed methods, so mixing qualitative interviews with survey analysis and remote sensing. And that kind of comes across in my current projects where I'm currently pursuing a master's in environmental science at the University of Washington, although I plan to continue and stay for my PhD here at this institution. So for my master's project, I kind of have two tangents. One is looking at the role of seed selection as a climate adaptation strategy among organic vegetable farmers in Western Washington, and that's all qualitative interviews. So I, collected about 30 interviews this past summer, asking people about how they're experiencing climate change and how they're using seeds to adapt, and how they're adapting more broadly. And then my second project is a little bit more geospatial and quantitative, and it's using a national survey that was a secondary data set provided by community partners, the Organic Farming Research Foundation, if folks have heard of them. And so specifically there, I'm looking at the impact of land access on perceived adaptive capacity among organic farmers in the US. So yeah, I'm a big believer in kind of letting the quantitative part be led and driven by the qualitative, on the ground specifics that you hear from interviews and from talking with people. And yeah, just a little bit more about my background. Like I said, I've done some farm work in the past, as well as communications work. So, that also just speaks to how important I think it is to make academic knowledge accessible and available to people who aren't necessarily in academia. And I've also done some cultural seed keeping work. And I just have a quick pitch in terms of a focus area for TOPS, which is kind of driven by some of these quotes that I've gotten from farmers in my research, which is that, so I'll just read this. So that's not even extreme weather events as much as a lot less predictability in the shoulder season. So early spring, I feel like there's a whole month that's even a bigger question mark than it used to be. So this is just this, I've noticed this theme of kind of variability, which is, of course, the extreme events are people are feeling that, especially things like wildfire and heat. And I think that there's a lot of work to be done there, but I think that there's also this other theme of, we can't rely on the climate as much as we could, as much as we used to be able to. We can't rely on the seasonality as much as we used to be able to. And that affects farmers a lot. And maybe we don't feel that, if we're living in cities, we don't feel like, for example, I'm in Seattle. It was just really sunny here in January, and we didn't get much rain for most of January, which for me in the city, like that was fine. And maybe I was even happy about that. But on a farm, if you're growing winter crops and you already turned off your irrigation, that could be, that could impact you. So just a pitch to kind of include measures of variability into these projects, just because that's what we're hearing. That's what I've been hearing from farmers on the ground. And I think that there's a lot of interesting ways you can measure that using remote sensing products, and potentially integrate it with, survey or production data to get at questions of, disproportionate impacts. Yeah. And that's my intro.
Thank you, Masha. The next one would be Daniel. Do you go by Daniel or Dan?
Yeah, I just go by Dan, but yeah. Hi everyone, Dan Vasilio. I'm an assistant professor of geography at the University of Nebraska at Omaha in my first year here. My current research has basically taken a back seat since I am in the first year of teaching, and that's kind of my focus right now. But in the past, I have focused on climate change and human health, specifically extreme heat, kind of like Liz is doing. Most recently, I've worked on the with physiologists looking at the upper limits of human tolerance to extreme heat, and where we're seeing those thresholds being reached or breached currently or in the near future. So combining individual level physiology data with global climate models to see where these thresholds are going to be reached over time. I guess I've also started to look more at the city scale, looking at access to things such as cooling centers, other adaptation strategies, and whether they're actually working or not. A lot of people just say, "Oh, we threw down a cooling center, our job is done." Are those cooling centers actually being used? Are they actually having an impact on the incidences of heat-related illness, things of that sort. So I've been looking at that as well. So really interested in getting into more city, state kind of level analyses such as that to have more direct impact than looking at things in a global sense. But yeah, that's probably all I have right now.
Great, thank you, Dan. Shristi?
Yeah, that's correct. Hi, everyone. I'm Shristi Adhikari. I'm actually from Nepal. I recently moved to US for my master's degree, so it's not even been a month of being here in US. I moved actually on Jan 9. Yeah. So basically my work, I started my climate journey in 2019, but I started actively working since 2020. So I did when I was in my bachelor. My bachelor is in agricultural science. So I did my undergraduate degree in agricultural science from Nepal itself. And I have been working more specifically focused on climate change, like relations between climate change and also on focusing on gender. Because in Nepal, we had, like almost, I don't think just in Nepal, in overall, in globally, if we also see like when we just imagine a farmer, we imagine as a male, but we forget that more than 50%, our populations is females and we have more female farmers. So my work basically focused on empowering more female farmers by teaching them, like climate smart, sustainable practices. So in 2022, when I was interned in the mountainous region of Nepal, I did this research on farmers' perceptions on impact of climate change, more focusedly in apple productions in the mountain regions of Nepal. So I do not have a basic knowledge on GIS, though my advisor is a GIS technician right now here in Kentucky State University. So I'm looking forward to learn GIS in my second semester. But right now, yes, I have that research also published in last year in 2024. I got my research published. And basically, I use the temperature and precipitations as two climatic variable. And like validate that data of like 30 years, taken that 30 years data, validate with the farmer's perception, like how they perceive temperature and precipitations and what kind of impact it has brought, especially in the apple productions in the mountains regions of Nepal. So my research basically focused on that. And I also receive a grant of around $1,500, which is a huge amount for Nepal to do any activities. So for my project, Gender, Climate, and Food Security. So through that project, we did, we taught we did that school, like a school kind of farmers field school, where we used to teach every weekend, like, okay, these are the methods how to do climate smart integrated pest management practices, giving them classes theoretically and then practically demonstrating it in the field with my site supervisors and everybody. So it was interesting. It was like a 16 weeks we did. After I graduated, I did 2 years work at an organization called Sea Changes Climate. So it was more for advocating for women's rights in the climate space. So yes, through during that time, I had an opportunity to be participating as a government delegate at United Nations Climate Change Conference. So I participated in Egypt and Dubai both. And right now, I've just started my master's degree journey at Kentucky State University. And I feel like I will be focusing my master's journey more specifically on factors affecting the conservation agriculture practice. And I was so related with Masla, I think. I'm sorry if I'm taking your name wrong, but I also like to focus more research on qualitative and like mixed method, I enjoy because I feel like community is where I belong and I like to go, and I talk with them and take data as everything. So yeah, I love that. Sorry for the long introductions. But yeah, that's all about my journey.
No worries. We're happy to hear as much as you want to say about your work. So thank you. We had one other panelist. We have one other panelist, but she had a medical emergency and wasn't able to join us today. I'm hoping that she will still be able to attend the AAG, but so we're just one panelist short. So we're actually running on pretty good time. Kit, do you want to?
Yeah, I think, Jacob, as if you wanted to take a few moments to show this lesson that you've been developing, I think it would give us some good context for kind of where we're headed.
Yeah, I would love to. I did not have it pulled up, but I can pull it up. But yeah, maybe I'll just talk a little bit about the module as is. So we designed this coming out of the University of Maryland, researchers and other people in the Eastern US talking about kind of saltwater intrusion and how that's impacting agriculture. And kind of what we were finding is that there were significant impacts on the ground that were measurable from remote sensing. And what we wanted to do with this module was rather than look at a single farm or identify like single farms and kind of place that burden and that emphasis on a farmer, let's look at a more regional impact and kind of talk more about the trends. And so we used NOAA 2025 sea level rise predictions as kind of the basis to look at what's being impacted and where the areas of impact are. And kind of talk to people and talk to students about, all right, what's currently happening and what might be the causes of those changes in vegetation health. And so, yeah, awesome. Thank you for pulling that up. So yeah, our goals from a consortium standpoint are to obviously improve the science and improve where we are at from a research side and using NASA data to do that. But then something we found through working with farmers is that security on their side is very important to them. And so not, targeting or highlighting specific farmers rather than and call it more the system into question and talk more about the impacts as a whole rather than call out a single farmer. So as you can see here, we're a consortium based around a couple of different universities, and we work in a lot of areas in agriculture, and they're all centered around remote sensing. And we use these EAVs, essential agricultural variables, to kind of define each of these scopes of interest. And in this module, we talk about cropland and crop type mapping, and then area estimations and cropping. And so I don't claim to be a educator, but I think this is my initial shot at kind of what remote sensing is and the highlights of why this module is important and why it can be applied to agriculture and kind of what the limitations are, but then also what the data you can gather from this is.
Yeah, no, I think you did great work, Jacob, and remembering that our aim in these lessons is for people that maybe have no prerequisite about what. So we're always going back to the foundation of things.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the goal, and it was fun to look back through courses and figure out where I learned a lot from, and yeah, build on some of the other top stuff that's already been out there. Yeah, and so I think the main point kind of here was to combine why agriculture, how agriculture, and then how we can use satellites to answer some of these important questions that we're talking about. Yeah, I took my shot at making some little artwork. So if there's any questions there,
Oh, you created these graphics?
yeah, they're PowerPoint, they slept on it.
That's
Well done.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so I created this with Dr. Michael Humber as part of a broader research out of the University of Maryland. And so yeah, we're kind of focused on, what are the regional impacts and what are the impacts right now happening. We have a broader view, but kind of what can we derive as insights now? How can we support people now? How can we change rules and regulations and maybe even funding to support farmers as they continue to grow and support us?
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much, Jacob. I don't know if there's anything more you want to say about acres in general.
No, I mean, nothing.
Yeah, no worries.
Keep supporting our federal government and cool
Yeah,
research we're doing. So.
we'll keep our heads high. We're carrying a banner right now of open science, and I'm going to carry it proudly until my head gets chopped off. But I think one thing that we found in this open source science project, and it really speaks to why open science is so integral and important, is that Jacob, me and him, we met through a mutual contact, and there was an opportunity to support what was going on at Acres that wasn't written into our original proposal, but because of open science and this kind of willingness to contribute and help each other out, now all of a sudden there's an additional lesson that we weren't even planning on. Which I guess another thing I wanted to share with all of you guys is one thing we're focusing on is making these lessons executable in the cloud. So I'm not sure if folks have shared with us their GitHub usernames yet. But if you can after the meeting or in the chat, we can give you access to this online system for running interactive code that's maintained by one of our partners in the TOPS mission, which is an organization called 2I2C. And basically we have these Quarto and these Jupyter notebooks that then we make available through this interface, and allows people to run and adapt the code in real time. We also have the GitHub repositories. So let me show those. I don't want to go to the IO page. Sorry, excuse me. So, we want to support people that want to download this data and run it locally without the cloud mechanism. Although there are a number of free options, including the iGuide project right now that provide for compute in the cloud. So we're trying to, reduce barriers to access across all these different domains. Another, I guess, open science success story is, a fellow TOPS awardee, National Louis University out of Chicago. They're an MSI in Chicago who, we'd met through this program, and then what it's turned into for us is a series of capstone projects where the students in this university have, taken our original work and they've migrated it into a Sphinx framework, which is a modern documentation framework for GitHub websites. So again, this is something we didn't anticipate or plan for, but it speaks to the power of open science, where people they want to get involved, and they've really added a bunch of nice features to the website that we wouldn't have done because we never budgeted actually to do that. So again, I think this is some evidence of open science working. And I say that, with your permission, one thing that we would love to do for all of you is to add you as subject matter experts on the team that has contributed to this. So, we don't have to do this right away, but it would be great to get headshots from people and add you as subject matter experts in our consultation team. Again, wanting to give everyone credit for their contributions. Of course, it's up to you whether or not you want to participate in that. So I think at this point we're ahead of schedule, which I know no one minds that. We should open up the floor, and maybe we'll get out of here a little bit early on a Friday. So is there anyone who has comments or questions, or we certainly, if there's something in your introduction about your work that you thought of after the introduction, we'd love to hear it. So again, opening the floor.
Can I
Just
have
say
a
that.
sorry.
No, go for it.
No, I just want to have a genuine concern. Okay, nothing with this word. Like I myself, I've been working for so long time with them. I want to continue, like my research in climate in future. Does the current scenario, whatever it is in the US, will let us do this? Do you think, like, to continue, especially in climate and agriculture, especially for your project? I just want to know in general, like what's plan, or you heard every news, things are being changed quickly here. So I just want to know the general concern, my general concern for the project.
Yeah, it's true that everyone is facing a lot of uncertainty. So I don't know that the question can really be answered right now about how things will go, except the fact that we're facing the uncertainty. But having been a researcher for the past almost 20 years, there have been similar types of things that have happened over that time period where we have these changes. Maybe they're not quite as dramatic as what we're seeing in these past couple of weeks. But like I was saying before, we're gonna hold our heads high and carry the banner, and I'm confident that the work will go on.
Yeah, I really hope, because even I'm like in that situation, like what I've been doing so long for that, and now suddenly, how can I change whole the research? Is something I'm also worried. That's why I just want to know how you guys are planning. That's all.
Yeah, I think that there's organizations out there that support this type of work, and I believe also the federal government will continue to support this work. I don't know how big, how much resources will be in what areas, but I think that we got to stick together and make good proposals, and then the ultimately good ideas will come to fruition.
Yeah.
Masha?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it was so great hearing everyone's backgrounds, and I'm really grateful to be part of this group, and I'm really looking forward to meeting everyone. And yeah, just a lot of gratitude to the season team for organizing this, and especially to Kit for kind of roping me into this community.
And thanks, Masha. Any thoughts from someone else? Elizabeth?
I just had a question for the panel. Are we gonna have like some questions ahead of time to like go like think through and everything, or like I don't know. I like logistics, so I'm just curious what those look like.
Yes, absolutely. We will, part of the reason to also have this kind of introduction, this pre-panel meeting, was to try and, identify what types of questions might be appropriate. We'll probably try to narrow down somewhere between, I think, 8 and 10 questions. I think that's what we did at the last AAG. And we'll share those certainly ahead of time so you can think about them and, think about what you might want to say.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a
Thanks.
great question. It's a great question, though. I feel like it made me think, hey, we didn't say anything about the logistics. Sorry, sometimes we get ahead of ourselves. But logistically, the panel, we want to give every panelist a chance to introduce themselves and their work for, 5 or 10 minutes. And we'll solidify this in advance in an email for exactly how much time each person gets. But then, yeah, we'll moderate with some questions and we'll also take questions from the audience.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, one of the things I mentioned in my last email is that, when none of us are experts really in these fields that we're developing the lessons for. I mean, we have some experience, but really our expertise is more in the working with the data. And one of the challenges we face sometimes is with the narrative that goes with the lessons. The narratives we want to be accurate about what we're saying, and so we're looking for papers to cite and resources to cite. So if you have any suggestions from your own fields and experience of import papers you think are important that would be appropriate for us to cite as we're talking about these lessons. So I know in my email I identified like 4 lesson ideas that we have so far. Those were separate from the one that Jacob's group developed. So I can share those again. They're in the thread, but I can share those again. So those are kind of the general ideas for the lessons that we have, and any literature that you are aware of that you think we should be aware of would be we would appreciate hearing about.
Yeah, basically our goal for the session and, why we've invited you all in is for you to help shape our use cases in a way that we can develop lessons that are, reflecting people's different experiences and different expertise. Because certainly most of the folks on our team, our expertise is in socioeconomic data and, climate change impacts and GIS. So we need to hear from other people in the community. And in the past modules, it has ended up driving us to do things that maybe we didn't expect.
So just ask a question about like our roles specifically. So from what I understand, we are kind of in a consulting role where like what we say during the panel will kind of inform the shape the lessons take, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then is there, if we want to help develop the lessons, is that kind of an opportunity or is that kind of set?
I absolutely. And I think we also do have a small number of stipends for people who work on lesson development. So, if that's something that if someone likes to write up these code and thematic lessons and wants to help out with that, it's an opportunity, and we'd certainly welcome that. Cool. Okay, so it's 3-3. I guess we'll do a last call for any final thoughts. 3-3 Eastern, I should say.
Yeah, just
Okay. Go ahead,
reiterate.
Jay.
Sorry, I just want to reiterate everybody else's like thank you guys very much for putting this together. Super excited to like share this off and the whole program. I think I'm really appreciative to be part of it and have this kind of keep moving forward.
Thanks so much, Jacob. All right. So sounds good. I think Linda was probably going to say what I'm going to say, which is you look out for some emails from us.
The semester's underway. It's quite busy, but we'll start to put together some questions and we'll share them, at least 2 weeks ahead of the AAG. We'll shoot for that.
Okay. Just 2 questions. Just not the questions, but just the permissions. Can I share this screenshot with my advisor if you don't have any issue?
No problem. Yep.
Okay. Just that was only my concern. Okay.
Did
Yeah.
you already take it or you need to take it? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I can take it. That's fine.
Yeah, we also provide you a link to the video. So we'll record the video and ultimately put it on Zenodo so you can add it to your CV.
Yeah, I thank you for reminding me, Kit. I just want to mention if if you do have an org ID and you want to have it tagged to the Zenodo entry or to be able to give you appropriate credit, please send us as well that information.
Yeah, that will be great. Thanks.
Okay, then. So thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it. It was great to meet you, and we will be in touch.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in Detroit.
See you in
Yeah,
Detroit.
excited to see all of you in Detroit.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.